In his essay, Grahamwood argues that gangs not only took over prisons, but also have gained more control over the prison system than the actual prison guards. He states Starbeck's primary claim is that the underlying order in California prisons comes from precisely what most of us would assume is the source of disorder, the major gangs. Wood provides a brief history about how the prison gang system started and its evolution to becoming what it is today. Wood offers a descriptive analysis about the prison gang system and the trading of contraband and the thought process behind the strategic decision-making of the gang leaders. The prison gangs have developed their own system and code that is coherently abided by all prisons. The Social Order of the Underworld is a book written by David Starbeck about the rational choice theory, which Wood refers to throughout his essay. Wood uses these main points to support his claim. The prison gang inmates do in fact have more control over the order of the prisons than the guards, and have taken over the prisons, then that can be seen as a positive outcome of having prison gangs formed. Wood quotes David Starbeck, stating prison gangs end up providing governance in brutal but effective ways. He says, they impose responsibility on everyone, and in some ways the prisons run more smoothly because of them. If it wasn't for the prison gangs, then the way prisons are run would be more hectic and chaotic. The gangs have the informal guidelines that are equally followed. They are meant to keep the same form of order in the disorder of things, in an attempt to prevent complete anarchy. It's almost as if the prison is their whole world, and they have their own society and government. However, their system within the system does not end at the front doors of the prison. Their gangs and illegal trade and business do reach their home neighborhoods. Wood says the gangs have business out on the streets too, but their principal activity and authority resides in prisons, where other gangs are the main powers, keeping them in check. The way the gang leaders have an agreement to certain terms and informal guidelines is almost like a form of checks and balances. For example, the inmates go to sleep. If an inmate keeps them from getting a good night's rest, then the leader of the gang he affiliates with will punish him to prevent any gang war from breaking out. They keep some sort of mutual respect for one another on a certain level. If anything, this helps the guards' jobs to keep complete order become much more probable and possible. Acts of crime are inevitable in a prison, as it is a huge facility occupied by thousands of criminals of all sorts. But the gangs have a positive influence on how efficient and smooth the gang and prison system is running. Therefore, gangs having all the control that they do isn't so bad. It can be seen as a necessity to a smoothly ran prison. Without gangs, then there would be less governance within the inmate population, possibly causing anarchy. The decision made by gang leaders and members is described to be influenced greatly by economic factors. This is supported by the rational choice theory, which explains human behavior as the product of reasonable decisions by economic actors. Wood says, in many cases, rational choice theory has shown behaviors to be rational that at first appear wild, irrational, or psychopathic. When people are encouraged or forced to act against their economic interest, they find workarounds as surely as water blocked by a boulder in a stream finds a way to flow around it. Consequently, the gang members strategize their decision based off of economic responsibility behind them. They are more inclined to do what will help them build an economic empire within the prison. This explains the acts of violence and reasons why they go through the extremes that they go to in order to smuggle and hide contrabands. They take some unusual extreme measures which no one would understand unless they're an inmate in a prison gang. The extreme measures are all a part of how they run their system, which ultimately assists the goal of total control in the prison system. Inmates and guards have developed mutual understanding as well, because it's pretty much impossible to prevent the illegal smuggling of drugs, cell phones, weapons, etc. The guards have a way of letting the inmates know that if they act out of control, then their items will be confiscated. Wood describes this when he discusses how during cell checks, the guard will place any illegal item on their bunks just to let the inmate know if he doesn't cooperate, then the guard will confiscate whatever he owns. Prisons didn't always have gangs. Initially, it was an every man for himself system. They also followed an informal set of guidelines to prevent themselves from getting into trouble and serving their prison time smoothly. It was over time the gangs developed in the 1950s due to a rise in conviction rates and the younger inmates not wanting to abide by an older prison code. The racial diversity also grew, which influenced the natural segregation of inmates into racially influenced gangs. They originally started in one prison, and when the guards first became newly acquainted with the prison gangs, they decided that it was bad for the control of the prison, so they then transferred prisoners from each gang to different prisons. This worked against their strategy to kill off the developing gangs, and in fact helped gangs expand to new prisons. However, because the gangs expanded, they were able to organize the new prisons. Otherwise, there would be no underlying system keeping the prisons running smoothly.